Good afternoon. After the service, there will be an interment at our cemetery. Please allow the funeral party to leave the hall first and then join one of the shuttle cars to the cemetery. After the interment, everyone is invited to a toast and reception at Peter's house. The doors will open at 4 o'clock. Please take a moment now to check that your cell phones will not sound. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Dear friends, today is yet another beautiful late autumn day, like so many we've had this year. But this day is made more special blessed by our purpose in being here. We are gathered together in presence to honor the death of our dear friend, Peter Morrow, and to celebrate his life, the life of a friend whose heart was from a very early age already looking heavenward. We wish to extend a warm welcome to Peter's brother Eric and his wife, Linda, and also his good friend, Dan Honeycutt. We thank them for joining us here today. It is not possible from where we are to know the full extent of Peter's imprint upon our lives and upon our school. But the impact of his absence tells us everything. Our dear Peter will be greatly missed. Now let us stand and remember Peter in silent presence. Thank you. Please be seated. Though Peter is most notably remembered for his love of flying, his spirit was firmly grounded in the work. In fact, Peter's compass, his true North Star, was support for his family and friends, support for fellow spiritual travelers, for the school, and for his beloved teacher. The brief flight of Peter's life is over now, but we can be sure that even in death, his spirit will not lose course. Surely, his spirit will hear the final call of the nightingale and respond.
It's very clear our love is here to stay, not for a year, but ever and a day. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancy, and in time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay, but our love is here to stay. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancy, and in time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay, but our love is here to stay.
A poem for Peter and for ourselves from Leaves of Grass. Assurances. I need no assurances. I am a man preoccupied of his own soul. I do not doubt that from under the feet and beside the hands and face I am cognizant of are now looking other faces. I do not doubt but the majesty and beauty of the world are latent in any iota of the world. I do not doubt I am limitless, and that the universes are limitless. In vain, I try to think how limitless. I do not doubt that the orbs and the systems of orbs play their swift sports through the air on purpose, and that I shall one day be eligible to do as much as they, and more than they. I do not doubt that temporary affairs keep on and on millions of years. I do not doubt interiors have their interiors, and exteriors have their exteriors, and that the eyesight has another eyesight, and the hearing another hearing, and the voice another voice. I do not doubt that the passionately wept deaths of men are provided for, and women, the deaths of little children are all provided for. Did you think life was so well provided for, and death the purport of life not provided for? I do not doubt that wrecks, no matter what the horrors of them, no matter whose wife, brother, child, husband, friend, lover has gone down, are provided for to the minutest points. I do not doubt that whatever can possibly happen anywhere, at any time, is provided for in the inherences of things. I do not think life provides for all, for time and space, but I believe heavenly death provides for all.
The end of an era is only seen in hindsight. Understanding this hopefully compels us to live our lives more fully and with as much grace and light as possible. The long days at Peter's camp in the Adirondacks, beautiful sunsets on the beach in Jamaica,
and flying adventures with Peter are now a golden era, remaining crisp only in our memories and our hearts. Peter was born in 1946 in Connecticut, the oldest of three. His mother, Margaret, was an artist, and Father Charles, an adventurous businessman. Peter attended Berkshire Prep School in Massachusetts, where his love of England began. He enjoyed playing polo and excelled as a horseman, things which fed his noble bearing. Peter was a country gentleman in the manner of the last century, with a few well-earned holes in his sweater and a fine horse and carriage in his barn in the Cotswold. When in London, he stayed at the venerable Connaught Hotel. Once while dining there, he told a friend that all the fine things he could afford could not help him be present to his life. In 1979, Peter joined the Fellowship of Friends, and since that moment, his commitment to his beloved teacher and his desire to evolve and encourage others to join him never wavered. When Peter and Robert first met, Robert asked him what he did. Peter replied that he owned Morrow nut houses, and Robert said, "You have come to the right place." Peter shared Robert's desire to make the school available to as many as possible, and worked to share presence with everyone he encountered, from janitors to politicians. He felt a need to share whatever was inspiring him in the moment. One time, Peter was with his mother, Margaret, who at the time was a fellowship student. Peter was pointing out the beauty of the flowers in the sky, and she said, "Peter, do you not know I have eyes in my head?" In fact, Peter was never certain that others saw the world as he saw it, and he felt compelled to be sure that they did not miss the moment. In the 1980s, Peter and Eric owned Morrow nut houses in Manchester and Birmingham and Broadway, England, where Hugh and Aurora and George and Richard worked making candy and selling nuts. Peter would go on to help fund the teaching house in New York with Benjamin and rent an apartment in Rome. Peter and Eric inherited the Jamaica Inn that their father built in the 1950s, turning it into the top boutique hotel in the Caribbean. He enjoyed sharing stories of famous guests like Winston Churchill and Marilyn Monroe. While hosting guests, he would keep an eye out for other seekers who might share with him his deep commitment to be present to life. Peter also held his door open in the Adirondacks for others to find their way to the fellowship. And in return, they kept each other company and helped him host many fellowship events in the Adirondacks. The last one occurred just a few weeks ago. Peter loved beauty, and he recognized that the present was always more complete when shared. His generosity to the school and to his friends was reflected in the splendid receptions that he would host at his villa, and his profound willingness to keep his door and his heart open to all visitors. He especially enjoyed small gatherings where students could share intimate and meaningful conversation. He hosted someone most evenings he was at Apollo. But as we know, his magical space was his airplane. Peter began flying at 15, and on cross-country trips, he would pitch a tent by his plane at night. Whether it was the most basic of air or sea planes, or with 1 or 2 engines, Peter loved them all, and taking to the sky thrilled and delighted him. He introduced many of us to flight in small cabin plane. Probably more than half the people in this room have flown with Peter. A few caught the bug, and Cheryl, Susan, Paul, and Edward bought their own planes. For a time, he would take Robert museum hopping. To the end, he continued to crisscross the country with dozens of friends. Once Peter rented a plane in Egypt and flew Adit and Allison over the ancient sites, a view even the pharaohs never enjoyed. Then, while staying at the Winter Palace in Luxor, Peter pondered over dinner as to whether he would join our Nile cruise. He decided that he would take an early morning flight home. In the morning, he surprised us by showing up for breakfast. He had gone to the airport that morning and was boarding the plane, and he realized that the cruise with Robert and his fellow travelers was more important than his business. At a young age, Peter contracted polio, and it left him with a limp that humbled him and gave him an early introduction to transforming suffering. But Peter's greatest physical challenge was not polio. It was alcohol. Over 10 years ago, with courage and determination, he took his last drink, went on a diet, and built his Italian villa. His perfect day was flying in the morning, tea with a friend in the afternoon, and dinner with Robert. Yesterday, Peter's brother Eric found a note, one of many that Peter left. It said simply, "Robert placed his finger on my forehead. And a delightful feeling flowed through me. Three months ago, I had a strong dream that Peter crashed his plane and was killed. I called him in the morning, and he said that he would rather not have known, as it made him anxious. Even so, he affirmed his desire to keep flying. All those that flew with Peter knew him as a safe and careful pilot. At the last, Peter's death came to him during a flight safety check in which his plane's engine failed. Russell said he had seen Peter do some very complicated maneuvers in emergency flying situations. But this time, he was just too close to the ground and ran out of time. Peter has flown hundreds of students over Apollo. Whenever we would hear his plane fly over during a meeting, Robert would often ask, "Is that Peter?" So now, when we hear the sound of a plane overhead, let us pause and remember Peter with presence and love.
This is love from Rumi. This is love, to fly toward a secret sky, to cause 100 veils to fall each moment. First, to let go of life. In the end, to take a step without feet to regard this world as invisible, and to disregard what appears to be the self. Heart, I said, what a gift it has been to enter this circle of lovers, to see beyond seeing itself, to reach and feel within the breast.
The shock of Peter's death will resonate throughout the school and our lives for many years to come. The perfection of that moment is the grand hallmark of the gods. Always, we must bend to their great will. Aristotle tells us, in honoring the gods, no one could ever give them as much as they deserved, but anyone who serves them as best as he can is considered to have acted fairly. Peter will long be remembered for his generosity, for his openness to new adventures, to new friends, new ways of thinking about the work, and for his loving support for loved ones, friends, and for the teacher and the school. These were all aspects of Peter's work and more. Surely, Peter did his best to remain with us. Peter did his best to serve the gods. As we say farewell to Peter, may the memory of his life remain with us as a signpost toward heaven. May his dedication to his beloved family and friends help us to reflect on our own need for valorous companionship. May his ceaseless service to the gods, his teacher, and fellow spiritual travelers remind us that we too journey along the same path. Dearest Peter, we thank thee. Our body is but a shell. Our souls will continue. Please stand.